grandmother breaks her silence, revealing the shocking truth about her father's dark past. Chapter 1: The Mysterious Beginning. The rain poured relentlessly, drumming against the window like 1,000 anxious hearts. Inside the dimly lit nursing home, Lila sat across from her grandmother, the air thick with an unsettling tension. Her grandmother, once vibrant and full of stories, now appeared fragile, her eyes clouded with secrets. Lila had always felt the weight of unspoken words between them, but today something felt different. The rain's rhythm seemed to beckon truths she almost dreaded to hear. Lila, her grandmother finally whispered, her voice shaky yet resolute. It's time to share what's been hidden. A tremor of fear ran through Lila. She had always viewed her father, the town's beloved mayor, as a paragon of integrity. The way the community adored him, it felt like they cloaked their family in a shimmering aura of respect. But that rain-soaked afternoon, shadows danced on the wall like phantoms, threatening to unravel everything she knew. As her grandmother spoke, Lila's heart raced. She listened in disbelief as secrets spilled out, dark and twisted like ivy choking a beautiful tree. Your father wasn't always the man you think he is, her grandmother confessed, the words tumbling from her lips like autumn leaves falling from an ancient oak. In his youth, he was involved in something terrible. Crime, betrayal, things that could destroy our family's name. Each revelation shattered Lila a little more, a reality check that clawed at her very soul. Outside, thunder rumbled, mirroring the chaos in Lila's heart. How could the father, who had taught her about morals and duty, be wrapped in this tarnished legacy? The thought made her stomach churn. But how can this be? She gasped, clenching her hands tightly as confusion swirled within her. Suddenly, the door creaked. Her grandmother's frail face became clouded with apprehension. Lila turned, feeling eyes on her. The local journalist, a relentless hunter for stories, lurked outside the nursing home, like a shark circling prey. His presence sent a jolt through her. What if he had overheard? The walls felt like they were closing in. Should she hide this newfound truth, or fight to uncover every layer of her father's past? Tensions rise, but there's more, her grandmother said, pulling a weathered envelope from underneath her shawl. She offered it to Lila, the letter trembling in her old hands. This may shed light on everything, dear. Lila's heart pounded in her chest as she gingerly took the letter, her fingers trembling against its worn paper. What secrets could it possibly hold? What other skeletons lurked in the shadows, ready to emerge into the dim light? The rain beat a relentless tempo on the window. With fierce determination in her eyes, she clutched the letter tightly, knowing this moment would define everything. What other secrets lie hidden, waiting to be unearthed? The storm within her raged on, a wild tempest of fear, doubt, and a burgeoning sense of hope. Lila held the letter tightly in her trembling hands, her heart pounding against her ribcage. "What's in this?" she whispered, her thoughts clouded with confusion. Her grandmother's frail fingers brushed against her own, trembling nervously as she wet her lips to speak. It's everything that's been buried, hidden beneath years of shame, Lila. The room felt smaller, the air thick, as Lila dared to open the weathered envelope. A part of her wanted to close her eyes to banish the impending storm of revelations, but duty anchored her. With a sharp intake of breath, she pulled out a single piece of paper, its edges yellowed with age. The words were scrawled in ink, each line vibrating with an ominous pulse that echoed in her ears. As Lila read, the weight of the world fell upon her, her father's name entwined with betrayal, guilt, and a series of haunting events she had never imagined. He was involved in something terrible. She repeated under her breath, feeling the lumps of disbelief rise in her throat. Her mind racing through memories, the good times she'd had with her father, now stained with shadows. Outside, the thunder roared louder, as if the heavens themselves were mourning. But just then, a loud crash splintered through the night. The sound echoed down the hallway, jolting both Lila and her grandmother from their reverie. Lila's heart leapt into her throat. Her grandmother's face turned pale, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" she whispered, scarcely audible over the tempest outside. Before Lila could respond, the door swung open with a force that rattled the room. A figure stumbled in, drenched and wild-eyed. Tom, the local journalist, his coat soaked through. "Lila," he gasped, breathless, panic painting his features. "You have to listen. It's about your father." "What did you hear?" Lila's voice was a thread, trembling with urgency. The letter slipped from her grasp, fluttering to the ground. Tom squared his shoulders, determination etched in his brow. "I was outside, following a lead," he said, his voice cracking. "And what I found, it changes everything." Lila felt dread swell in her chest. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, a storm of questions swirling in her mind. And then he spoke the words that shattered her world. "Your father didn't just witness the crime. He was behind it. The whole town has been covering for him to protect you." Lila staggered backward, her breath hitching in her throat. "No, it can't be!" she gasped, battling disbelief. The room spun, a whirlwind of emotions crashing against her. Every cherished moment spent with her father warped into something monstrous. "He's not! He wouldn't!" Tom's gaze softened, but his urgency remained. "I have proof. You have to see it before anyone else does." He pulled out a flash drive, eyes darting. "It's all here. Pictures, documents, testimonies. Your father's ties to everything. Criminal dealings, bribery, everything." Her heart felt like it was shattering. The man she loved, the father she trusted, suddenly transformed into a dark figure. How could she look at him the same way again? A lump formed in her throat, a weight too heavy to bear. "You don't understand," she stammered. He taught me right from wrong. This cannot be true. Lila's grandmother sat silent, tears brimming in her eyes, the truth already cascading over her like a bitter rain. You need to know, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice thick with sorrow. As Lila stared at Tom, the words hung in the air, like a thunderclap ready to strike again. You have to choose, Lila, he urged. Do you protect him, or do you face the truth? The choice loomed heavy, filled with unthinkable consequences. Her heart raced with a wild mix of dread and adrenaline, uncertainty swarming her thoughts. She looked at her grandmother, then back to Tom. What do I do now? Outside, the thunder cracked once more, and in the silence that followed, Lila knew she was standing on the edge of a chasm. One step closer to uncovering her father's truth could shatter everything she loved. But turning away could mean living a lie. Which path would she take? Lila felt the tremor in her hands as she gripped the letter tighter. Tom's eyes were frantic, fear and urgency emanating from him in waves. You need to see, he started, but suddenly the room shook with the force of another crash. It sounded like it came from the hallway, and before Lila could process it, the lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A scream echoed down the corridor, sharp and piercing, followed by frantic footsteps. Her heart raced, hammering against her chest, drowning out the sound of the rain outside. What's going on? Lila shouted, her voice tinged with panic. Tom grabbed her arm. Stay close, he urged, his grip tight. As they huddled together, the dim emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Lila's breath quickened. Her grandmother's shaking hands clutched the edge of the table, her face a portrait of fear. What's happening? She whispered, her voice cracking. Then a figure appeared in the doorway, tall and foreboding. It took a moment for Lila to realize it was a police officer, drenched from the rain, his uniform clinging to him. We need to evacuate, he barked, scanning the room. There's been an incident in the building. Everyone's in. Danger! Danger? Lila's mind raced. What kind of danger? The officer stepped closer, his demeanor tense. Someone's been found unconscious. We believe it's linked to an ongoing investigation. You need to come with me now. Tom's face paled. Is it the journalist? He asked, his eyes darting. The officer hesitated, then nodded. A chill swept through Lila. Was it Tom's lead? Was it all connected? Lila, we have to go, her grandmother urged, her voice trembling. But before they could move, another loud crash rang out. This one even more thunderous. The ground seemed to shake beneath them. The lights flickered wildly, and then the screams began. They rushed out of the room, heartbeats pounding in their ears. The hallway was in chaos. Residents were spilling out from their rooms, confusion and fear painted on their faces. Where's the exit? Lila shouted, but no one seemed to know. Follow me! The officer shouted, leading them down the hall. The rain pounded violently against the windows, drowning out the cries. They rounded a corner, and suddenly, Lila froze. There, Lying against the wall was Tom, his coat soaked. He looked pale and unconscious, a flash drive clutched tightly in his hand. "Tom!" Lila gasped, rushing to his side. She knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder gently. "Tom, wake up! You have to wake up!" But his eyes remained closed. Panic surged through her. Why wasn't he moving? The chaos around them faded as Lila focused on Tom's still form. Memories rushed in. His determined face, the urgency in his voice, and the way he pushed her to seek the truth. This couldn't be the end of it. Just then, another figure approached. This one familiar and terrifying. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the silhouette. Her father stepped into the dim light, his face twisted in a desperate mixture of anger and despair. "Leave him alone," he shouted, the words cutting through the air like glass. "Dad?" Lila's voice trembled. "Get away from him," he insisted, stepping closer. The room was a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, terror, confusion. "What's happening?" Lila cried, her heart racing. But then, something in her father's expression changed. He looked at Tom, then back at Lila, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of something deeper, something unnameable in his eyes. "Lila, it's not what you think," he breathed, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You lied!" she shouted, anger bubbling up in her chest. But just as she was about to confront him, the air shifted again. The police officer grabbed her arm, turning her toward the exit. "We need to go, now!" In the distance, sirens wailed, and Lila's world shattered yet again. What was the truth? Who was telling the truth? As they rushed into the stormy night, her mind raced, turmoil swirling within her like a tempest. And just as they crossed the threshold, a voice broke through the chaos, echoing in her mind. "Remember, Lila, you are not who you think you are." What did that even mean? In that moment, on the cusp of the unknown, Lila felt the fabric of everything she knew unravel. The storm outside raged on, leaving Lila with one unshakable thought. There was more to the story than she could ever imagine. And she was right in the middle of it. As they burst through the exit doors, the storm greeted them like a wild animal, wind whipping through their clothes and rain soaking them to the bone. Lila's heart pounded, fear coursing through her veins. The chaos of the nursing home receded into the background, but the confusion in her mind remained. Who was her father? What had he done? Tom lay against the wall, still unconscious. The officer's grip was firm, pulling her away. "There's no time!" he shouted, urgency etched deep in his expression. "Wait!" Lila cried, fighting against the pull. She couldn't leave Tom behind. A part of her felt anchored to him. An unbreakable bond formed in the turmoil of these unfolding truths. But just then, a low rumble echoed through the rain-soaked night, shaking the ground beneath her. The air felt electric, charged with something dangerous. "Go, now!" shouted the officer again, the tension in his voice rising. Somewhere behind them, shouts rang out. Residents, staff, there was confusion, panic spilling like a tangling net of chaos. Lila turned back, desperation clawing at her throat. She could see flashes of light. They were coming from the nursing home. Was it a fire? The officer pulled her closer, and she stumbled, disoriented. "We need to evacuate. It's not safe." As her eyes darted around, a sudden explosion turned the night into a cacophony of noise and chaos. The air crackled, a blinding flash illuminating everything for a split second. A horrified scream pierced the already raging storm, drowning out the wind and rain. "What was that?" Lila screamed, still clutching her grandmother's hand. The officer pushed them forward, urging them onto the street. But then she saw it, a figure emerging from the smoke. It was broken and battered, but somehow familiar. "Dad?" she gasped, the breath catching in her throat as her heart plummeted. The figure stumbled, turning toward her. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, Lila felt the world tilt. Her father's face was marked with soot and fear. But there was something else, something deeper, that made her blood run cold. "Lila," he croaked, voice cracking, desperation spilling from his lips. "I didn't want you to know, not like this." "What?" Lila's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" And then, as if the world was spinning beyond control, he pointed back towards the nursing home. "They found the truth, and they're coming for all of us. You have to understand." Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the crowd. The once familiar faces of townsfolk gathered, expressions of rage and betrayal morphing into a collective darkness. "There he is!" someone shouted, finger pointing straight at Lila's father. "Isn't he supposed to be in jail for what he did?" another voice cried. Her world shattered again. The truth unspooled before her like a dark ribbon. "What did you do?" she whispered, the dread settling like a stone in the pit of her stomach. I never meant to hurt anyone. It was supposed to be safe. They promised," he shouted. But his words faded beneath the storm of anger rising around them. Lila felt the weight of disbelief crash over her like a tidal wave. The man she thought she knew, the loving father who held her at night, was mixed up in something more malignant than she ever could have imagined. As her heart raced, the crowd surged forward, torches burning in their hands, angry shouts filling the night. Her grip on her grandmother tightened, denial clawing at her throat. "Leave him," Lila yelled, but it felt so small against the growing tide of fury. "Run," her grandmother urged, her voice trembling with fear. But Lila couldn't move. Her father's eyes caught hers, a mix of desperate pleading and regret. What had he done? What truth lay buried beyond this storm? As shadows closed in, Lila felt a fracture deep inside her. Her very identity rocked to the core. And in that moment, terror and rage collided. There was no turning back. The truth was right in front of her, and her world hung on the edge. What would she choose now? Would love outweigh the darkness? The storm raged on, but within it, Lila stood frozen, a single question burning in her mind. Who was truly standing next to her? Lila stood frozen, her father's gaze piercing through her confusion. The crowd was closing in, a sea of faces twisted in anger. "What did you do?" she murmured. The words caught in her throat, heavy like stones. Just then, a loud crack echoed from above, and everyone looked up. A dark figure leapt down from the rooftop above the entrance, crashing into the crowd with a force that sent people stumbling backward. "Look out!" someone shouted, as the figure landed with a thud, rolling to a stop. A woman. Rainwater soaked her, but she lifted her head. Wild hair framing a face Lila recognized all too well. Nadia, her estranged older sister. "Lila!" Nadia's voice cut through the clamor, raw and urgent. "Get away from him!" Lila's heart skipped a beat. Nadia? Here? The years apart felt like a chasm. Shook off the shock. "Nadia? What are you doing?" Lila couldn't comprehend it. Why was she here, and why now? Nadia scrambled to her feet, eyes darting like a caged animal. "You don't understand. You has to listen to me." The crowd surged forward, with a chorus of jeers aimed at their father. "You'll pay for your crimes!" someone screamed. "You're a disgrace!" "Stop!" Lila yelled, spinning to face them. But her father was shouting too, trying to calm the growing storm. "It's not what you think. I can explain." A flicker of fear crossed Nadia's face. "They don't care about explanations. They want justice." The words hit Lila like a punch. Justice? For what? The truth hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and dark. Before she could ask, Nadia stepped closer, pulling Lila aside. "You have to leave with me, now. There's no time." Lila's brain raced, trapped between her father's pleading eyes and her sister's fierce urgency. "What do you mean? What's going on?" But Nadia only shook her head. "They're going to expose everything. We have to get away before it's too late." Suddenly, a loud crash behind them stole Lila's breath. The entrance doors shattered as someone barged through, shouting. It was a man, his face obscured by shadows, but Lila sensed something familiar. A chill ran down her spine as he pushed through the throng. "Lila!" he bellowed. "It's me, Mark!" "Mark?" The name sent shivers through her. Mark, the childhood friend, turned something more. A relationship interrupted by her family's disapproval. But what was he doing here? The crowd roared louder, demanding answers. What's he doing here, they wondered, fury lacing their voices. As Lila tried to process it all, Mark rushed closer, his face pale. "You have to trust me. I found evidence that explains everything." But before he could finish, the fiery glow of headlights pierced through the rain, illuminating the scene. More squad cars were pulling up, officers spaying out, commands shouted into the night. "Get back! Everyone stand down!" Lila felt her heart drop. The chaos was escalating, and inside it, her. Truth seemed farther away than ever. In that moment, a piercing scream shattered the air. It was faint, but unmistakable. A voice she knew. "Mom?" Lila gasped, the world around her suddenly spinning. Nadia looked at her, eyes wide with horror. What do you mean? I heard her, Lila insisted, stepping back, searching for her mother. Thunder cracked overhead, but it faded beneath the cacophony of shouts and demands. The faces in the crowd stared, confusion and anger written across them. And amidst it all, Lila felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Your mom," Nadia began, but her voice faded, replaced by the roar of sirens that blared to life. Mark grabbed Lila's arm. "We need to go, now!" But Lila stood paralyzed, torn between fear and the burning urge to uncover the truths that all her instincts screamed at her to live. Suddenly, there was a flash of movement, not from the crowd, but from the thrumming darkness. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, stepping into the beleaguered light of approaching police cars. "No," Lila breathed, recognition flooding over her as the figure peeled back its hood. The world tilted, and in one heartbeat, everything she thought she knew shattered. Her mother stood there, tears streaked down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Lila. I'm so sorry." And in that moment, the weight of every hidden truth crashed upon Lila, heavier than the storm itself. What had they all been hiding? What had led them to this, to unravel before her very eyes? The resolve in her cracked open, like a fragile eggshell, leaving only questions boiling beneath the chaos. How could everything have changed so swiftly? What other truths lay buried in the storm? As her breath caught in her throat, a single thought emerged. Was any of it real? Was she even safe? Lila stood there, her heart pounding wildly as her mother's face, wet with rain and tears, shifted through layers of confusion and pain. "I'm sorry, Lila. I'm so sorry." Her mother's voice felt like a fragile thread, unraveling Lila's world. Lila's mind raced, agony twisting inside her. "Why are you here? What happened?" Each word slipped out like ice shards, her body trembling against the storm's chill. Nadia pulled Lila closer, her eyes darting around the encroaching crowd. "You need to trust me. We have to move." But Lila couldn't tear her gaze away from her mother. "Mom, please, tell me the truth." Then the air shifted. There was a stillness that fell over the crowd, an eerie quiet that clawed at Lila's skin. All eyes turned toward the dark figure that had emerged from the smoke. And suddenly, everything shattered. "Lila!" The voice boomed, deep and haunting, echoing against the howling wind. A man stepped forward, his presence so imposing, it felt like the storm itself had taken form. He was tall and rugged, shadows framing his face as the light flickered from the police cars. Lila's breath caught in her throat. "Who?" "Your father's past is a lie," he shouted, cutting through the chaos. "He is not who you think he is." The crowd murmured, confusion rippling through the faces. A sharp gasp escaped from her mother's lips, eyes wide with horror. "No! You shouldn't be here!" "Mom," Lila whispered, a pit forming in her stomach. "What does he mean?" Then the man stepped into the light, and everything slid into focus. Lila's heart raced as recognition hit her like thunder. "Uncle Mike?" Lila You don't understand, he urged, desperation clawing at his eyes. It was never about the crime. He's been living a lie to protect you. You have to listen. Protect me from what? Lila shouted, the confusion shredding her insides. Her father stood frozen, face pale, a look of dread pooling in his gaze. The truth! Uncle Mike barked, voice shaking. It's all tied to your mother. The secrets, the betrayals, it all connects. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the dark certainty in his eyes. Your mother and I? He paused. Pain etching lines on his face. It's not right what they did. Her mother stepped forward, shaking her head vehemently. Mike, don't. You need to know, he insisted, urgency surging. The past hasn't just haunted us. It's coming for you. 2. The crowd was silent, spellbound, as Lila felt the icy fingers of fear curl around her heart. What are you talking about? What did you do? The air was electric, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. You have to hear my side, Lila. Your father was a pawn in a game much larger than you can imagine. The crowd shifted, tension twisting, awaiting the next blow. Just tell her the truth, Mike. A voice boomed from behind. Clarity washed over Lila. Somewhere buried beneath the chaos was the answer she sought. But it felt like quicksand. What is happening? And just then, as if the universe was ripping apart, a blast shook the ground beneath them. The explosion erupted in a fiery roar from the nursing home. Flames shooting into the rain-soaked sky. Lila stumbled back, terror gripping her. No! She turned fiercely to find her mother, who was yelling something, but the sound drowned beneath the chaos. The truth can't be buried, Mike shouted, catching Lila's gaze. It's all about to come out, and when it does, everything will change. As the flames illuminated the night, Lila felt her world crumbling, each revelation tearing through the fabric of her reality. What truth? She screamed, searching faces of the crowd, looking for reassurance, knowing she might find none. In that moment, as the sky lit up with chaos, the foundation of her existence trembled. What was unfolding before her eyes was not just a storm, but the unraveling of everything she believed. What are you hiding? Lila yelled, the question hanging heavy in the air, suffocating. But all she got in return was fear. All around her, faces twisted with trepidation. Relationships began to shake. Everything she held dear began to slip away into darkness. And among the flames, she understood one thing. The storm was only beginning. Lila stood amidst the chaos, heart pounding. As flames shot up into the torrential night, the world around her blurred, anger mixing with dread in a confusing whirlwind. The truth was slipping through her fingers like rainwater. Lila! You need to run! Nadia's voice broke through. But her gaze was still locked on their father, whose face twisted in anguish. No! Lila shouted back. But the words felt like whispers, drowned by the rising roar of the flames. The crowd still clamored, tension thick in the air. Her mother's eyes were wild, pleading, like she was caught in a tempest of her own. But then, there it was again, that sickly sweet scent wafting through the burning smoke, the acrid metal tang of something else, something familiar. Lila's stomach churned, feeling tight and hollow as she searched the ground, memories swirling in her head. "Mom, what is happening?" she gasped, as another figure began to emerge from the shadows, moving toward them, in the flashing lights of the police cars. She could barely make out the outline. The world around her slowed, the chaos fading into a dull hum. And then the figure stepped into sight, soaking wet, hair plastered to his forehead. "Lila, you need to listen." It was Mark, his eyes frantic, mouth moving like a whirlwind. "What?" she barely managed to breathe. "I found something. Something that ties everything together, more than you know," he gasped, urgency spilling from his every word. His voice was laced with panic, and Lila felt her heart race again, racing toward an unknown. But before she could respond, another violent tremor shook the ground beneath them. The heat from the nearby fire surged, licking Lila's skin. The crowd gasped, eyes wide in horror, as a voice bellowed from the direction of the flames. "Everyone back!" The voice was deep and commanding. As Lila turned, she watched a police officer charge toward her, shouting, "Get away from the fire! Now!" In that moment, something, a loud crack, sounded like thunder, and Lila's world erupted with a blinding flash. A sudden burst of light engulfed the street, and as she shielded her eyes, a chilling scream reverberated through the air. "No!" When Lila opened her eyes, everything was in slow motion. The smoke billowed, whipping around her, and through the haze, she saw her father stumble, his expression morphing into one of sheer terror. He fell, but not alone. Someone had dragged him down. Her breath hitched as she realized it was Uncle Mike, holding him back with a ferocity that took her breath away. "You can't save this," Mike hissed, fury in his eyes. And then Lila understood. "What do you mean?" she shouted. But the words felt lost in the chaos that suddenly froze around her. "Your father, he made choices to protect you. But those choices didn't just hurt him, they hurt us all." Uncle Mike's voice cracked. "He knew what he was doing, Lila. He'd been lying to you, your mother, everyone." Lila felt her heart shatter, the weight of betrayal swallowing her whole. But before she could process it, another figure plunged through the smoke. A woman, her features hidden, yet there was something hauntingly familiar about her. "Mom?" Lila cried, the panic rooting her to the ground. Suddenly, the flames roared higher, and the woman paused, lifting her face into the flickering light. "It's time to choose, Lila," she said, her voice steadier than the chaos around them. "Choose?" Lila echoed, voice trembling. But then, as the smoke began to clear, the woman's face came into full view, and Lila's world twisted again. "I'm your birth mother," she stated flatly, each word falling heavy, shattering the notion of who Lila believed she was. The air around Lila went cold, the past crashing down through her like a tidal wave. The truth ripped through her, leaving only questions in its wake. "What?" How? Everything. It's all linked to a darkness you don't even understand, the woman continued. Your father, our father, fought to shield you from our family's legacy of shame. But it's too late now. With those words lingering in the air, the ground trembled one last time, and Lila stood at the edge of a terrifying truth. Her heart raced as her mind spun, filled with unanswered questions. Who was she really? What other secrets lay entwined in her family's past? As the storm continued to brew, Lila felt herself spiraling into an abyss, unsure of where this truth would lead. Empty, yet overwhelmed with a sense that the storm had only just begun. Lila stood there, her heart pounding wildly as the truth washed over her like a freight train. Her mother's words echoed in her ears, shattering the fragments of her reality. But before she could digest this new revelation, before she could wrap her mind around the idea of who she truly was, a thunderclap reverberated through the air. Without warning, an explosion rocked the nursing home, sending a fiery plume into the night sky, brighter than 1,000 suns. The ground shook beneath Lila's feet. She stumbled, fear clawing at her throat as she fought to stay upright. She could barely process what was happening when a blinding light swallowed her vision. The world went silent. For a heartbeat, everything halted. The shouts, the flames, even the torrential rain seemed to freeze in place. Time stretched on like an elastic band, and Lila's thoughts went dizzy, spinning through fragments of memories and betrayals. And then the scream pierced the silence. It wasn't just any scream. It was a guttural, primal sound. Lila's heart raced as her gaze darted toward the source. From the smoke emerged a figure, silhouetted against the fire's glow. Lila! The voice carried a chilling familiarity. It was Tom, but he looked different, deranged, wild. His eyes were wide with a terror that sent icy pins down her spine. Tom? She managed to whisper, but he didn't answer. Instead, his face twisted in agony. He clutched something to his chest, and with an urgency that made her breath hitch, he shouted, "I found out everything! You're not safe! None of us are!" Panic surged through the crowd as they shifted, uncertainty taking hold. Gasps rose, mixing with cries of confusion. "What do you mean?" Lila shouted, desperation lacing her voice as everyone turned their focus to Tom. His expression darkened, fear wrapping around him like a shroud. "They're here! I saw them! The ones who've been watching, they know you!" Just then, the air crackled with tension. An oversized black van screeched to a halt nearby, tires screeching as it skidded to a stop. The doors burst open, revealing figures in dark uniforms, men and women, faces obscured with sunglasses and hoods, stepping out with a determination that set the crowd into a frenzy. "Get down!" one of the officers shouted, and chaos erupted. People screamed, pushing and shoving in every direction. Lila felt her grandmother tugging at her hand, urging her to move. But Lila's feet were glued to the pavement. "Stop!" she cried, her voice lost in the din. "What's happening?" Tom staggered forward, his face pale, and whispered, "They've been waiting for this moment. It's all connected. Everything." Before she could grasp the implications of his words, the crowd roared in fright as the dark-clad figures rushed toward them. They shouted commands, and Lila's heart dropped as she recognized one of them, a familiar face from town. "Hannah? What are you doing?" Lila gasped. But it was too late. Hannah pulled something shiny from her pocket, and Lila felt her blood run cold. It was a gun, glinting ominously under the flickering lights. "Get away from her!" Mike bellowed, body moving protectively in front of Lila. But just as tension spiraled to the breaking point, shots rang out. The first bullet whizzed past, followed by a cacophony of chaos. Lila froze, breath hitching as fear gripped her. She looked at her father, whose guilt-ridden face was filled with a mixture of horror and despair. And then a scream broke through, beautiful and resonate, a sound so haunting. Lila recognized it instantly. "Lila!" It was her mother. Her voice shattered Lila, and she jolted towards the sound, desperation grounding her feet. The dark figures surrounded her as the world spun out of control. All she saw was her mother's terrified eyes, pleading as if they were the last connection to sanity in an unraveling world. "Don't!" Lila cried out. But just as her mother's lips parted to speak, another gunshot rang out. Echoing through the night and striking against everything Lila thought she knew, time froze again, and the loud pop broke through all rationality. Was it her mother? Everything morphed into chaos in a whirlwind of smoke and fear, leaving a single question hanging suspended. What just happened? Was this truly the end? Or was it only the beginning of something worse? The last shred of her reality shattered around her, and Lila couldn't stand still. She needed the truth. But would she ever find it? Lila stood frozen, heart hammering. The world around her spun like a tornado of chaos. Gunshots, screams, flames. Confusion wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. "Mom!" she yelled, panic rising as she searched for her mother in the smoke. But the moment felt frayed, like a dream slipping away. And then it happened. A blinding flash disrupted everything. A figure burst into the light, barreling forward through the chaos. "Lila!" It was her father, but he didn't look like the man she knew. His face was twisted with panic, eyes wide with an emotion she had never seen before. "You need to get back!" he shouted, voice trembling. Behind him, Mike was wrestling with Hannah. They were grappling on the ground, fury pouring from their eyes. "You've always known, haven't you?" Mike yelled, wrestling the gun away from Hannah. "Stop, both of you!" Lila cried out, but her voice felt so small. The crowd surged, people shouting, trying to make sense of it all. What is going on? Lila's voice broke, fear clenching her throat. And then she saw it. Her mother. She was staggering away from the fire, wide-eyed and breathless. Lila! Run! But then Lila noticed something in her mother's hand, a small, glinting object held tightly to her chest. A key? But why? Her heart sank as realization began to set in. Mom, what's happening? Lila shouted again, taking a step forward as urgency clawed at her insides. That's when Tom lunged past Lila, his eyes wild with fear. It's not just a cover-up. We have to leave. They're coming. Who's coming? Lila cried, bewildered. She could barely hear herself over the roar of the chaos. Hannah broke free from Mike, and he stumbled backward. No, she screamed, pointing at Lila's father. You can't let him control you anymore. You have to tell her the truth. A silence fell over the crowd. Everyone paused, confusion plastered on their faces. Lila's heart raced. The air felt thick. What truth? She managed to gasp, feeling dizzy. In that moment, the crowd shifted. Just then, several dark figures appeared at the edge of the light, shadows lurking ominously. Fear pressed down on Lila like a weight. What is this? She choked out. Lila! Mark shouted, fighting through the throng. It's not him! Your father isn't who you think. Listen to Hannah. Stop! Lila screamed, but her words fell into the madness around her. Then, in a heart-stopping instant, another explosion shattered the night, sending waves of heat rushing towards them. The ground shook violently. Lila stumbled, crashing against the wall of the nursing home as desperation clawed its way through her. No, this can't be happening! And that's when it unfolded. Time slowed as Lila caught a glimpse of someone, their hand raised, squeezing the trigger in slow motion. Mom! A bullet tore through the air, and in that breathless moment, Lila's mother fell, a startled look on her face as she crumpled to the ground, glinting keys slipping from her fingers. Everything froze. Urgency vanished, replaced by a disbelief so profound it threatened to shatter the ground beneath her. Lila felt the world close in, heart rearing as she knelt beside her mother. Mom! She cried, tears flooding her vision. But the air like smoke. Lila's heart was breaking, pieces staining the truth that was now irreversible. Then came a low murmur from the crowd, whispers rippling like a tide. What just happened? Hannah's face twisted in horror. That was not supposed to happen, she cried, panic dancing in her eyes. Who was it? Lila choked out, desperation clawing at her throat. And just as she turned to find Uncle Mike, the ground trembled again. The shadows crept closer, and the weight of their secrets pressed down like a cruel joke. In that moment, reality twisted, leaving Lila with one compelling thought. What dark truth had her mother kept hidden that could lead to this? Who was truly pulling the strings in this violent, tangled web of betrayal? And now, as everything unraveled, Lila's heart raced with a single question. What else lay buried in the ashes of the past, waiting to ignite. Lila knelt beside her mother's still body, tears spilling down her cheeks like a waterfall. The chaos of the world faded as her heart shattered into a million pieces. All the questions swirled in her mind like a furious storm. What had gone wrong? What truth had led to this moment? "Mom!" she screamed, shaking her gently. But there was nothing, no response, only silence. A tightness suffocated her chest, and she felt the sharp pain of loss piercing deep. Mike turned to Lila, his face pale and filled with regret. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he breathed, words trembling. "But it's all connected. Your father, he tried to shield you, but it backfired. They were pulling the strings all along." "Stop! Just stop!" Lila cried, fury and grief mixing inside her like a raging fire. "You don't get to explain now." Tom, still shaken, pushed through the crowd, eyes wide. "Lila, we have to go. They know. They're watching." The tension buzzed in the air, like static just before a storm. Lila looked around. Everyone was on edge. People whispering in horror, eyes darting. Then her father stepped closer, face haunted by anguish, and Lila could barely look at him. "You need to hear me," he shouted, louder than the storm. "I wanted to protect you from my past, the choices I made. I'm so sorry." The vulnerability in his voice pulled at something inside her, something buried beneath betrayal. But could she trust him? Lila stood abruptly, the screams of anguish behind her muffled by thunder. "What happened? Why was I never told?" Her voice cracked, slicing through the noise around them. "What do you have to do with all this?" "Lila, please," he begged, reaching out. Desperation etched in his features. "Your mother, she loved you more than anything. But there's so much we've hidden. The truth isn't easy." The flames flickered behind him, casting ominous shadows. Lila's heart raced. "What do you mean?" She felt dizzy, like the ground was shifting beneath her. "What's the truth?" Tom pointed, his voice urgent. "It's behind you, the key. It holds everything we need to know." Lila glanced down, her mother's lifeless hand still clutching the metallic object that glimmered in the dying light. Panic swelled in her chest, and she bent to grab it, a piece of her mother slipping away forever. Without realizing it, she fled the chaos, adrenaline propelling her forward. The world around her blurred as she found herself in the shadows of the alley, heart racing. Was this the moment everything would change? Behind her, she could hear the crowd, rallying, shouting, arguing. "This isn't over," someone roared. Then she saw him, Mark, barreling through the rain, eyes wide with determination. "Lila!" he yelled, voice hoarse from the adrenaline. "You're not safe. Get away!" But Lila felt emboldened. "I've had enough!" she shouted back. "I won't be afraid anymore!" Her grip tightened around the key. This was the truth she had yearned for, the answers that lay in her grasp. But would it be enough? As she stepped back into the swirling chaos, the world felt brand new, yet terrifying. Would they stand together to face whatever storm awaited? Would they finally unveil the shadows that plagued their lives? And just then, as thunder rumbled overhead, an undeniable resolve surged within her. She would confront whatever awaited. She wouldn't run, not anymore. Because the storm may have begun, but the truth was hers to unearth. Now, it's time for you to step into the storm. You need to hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss the next exclusive unraveling of this tale. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your wild theories about what just happened here. And don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who must know what comes next. Only true fans understand the importance of standing with us in this thrilling journey.